Good morning. This is Patsy Spencer with Deer Creek Studios, and I'm going to do my third attempt at showing you how to do an alternative method to making continuous bias binding. This was shown to me by a friend, and I've seen it in a couple of books, but I like this method, and I use it for my cording I make for pillows. I make a lot of pillows during Christmas and spring, summer, everywhere, all the time. So I'm going to try to show you what I consider to be a faster method. And this is more home deck fabric. This is the wrong side of the fabric. I have already sewn it together. But what I did is, home deck fabric is normally 54 to 60 inches wide. So this is folded on top of itself. I cut it 15 inches this way. That was just my choice. You can make it less, more, whatever you want to do. As long as you have a rectangle, you sew right sides together. The fold is over here, and the raw edges are 1, 2, 3. So what you want to do is sew right sides together, sew from one folded edge all the way around, stopping at the corners and turning down and over all the way up to the other side. So this is an enclosed piece. And again, this is the wrong side. This is a red and white stripe, a thin stripe. So I wanted to show you this new method that I learned, which I really enjoy, and I hope you'll be able to see the whole thing. The first thing you want to do is you're going to draw a diagonal line from one corner to the opposite corner on the other side. And I'm going to make this line with a magic marker so you'll be able to see it really clearly. And you want to go from the stitching at the fold, like put the one side of the ruler there, and the other end of the ruler is going to go to this pivot corner. These are the raw edges here. So you're just going to draw a diagonal line from one stitched edge, and the ruler moved all the way down to the other stitched edge. It's not a big deal if you go off the corner because you're just about to trim that off. And the reason you're going to trim it off is because you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, but going in the opposite direction. So when you trim this corner off, you're going to know which ones are your opposite corners. Okay? Don't cut into the stitching. And I used a 1/2 inch seam allowance. That was just my preference. I think this size, 15 inches wide, I think it's about 56 inches this direction, makes 8 or 9 yards of 2.5 inch bias. So I tend to cut my bias wider. I liked a lot of extra room. So here's your line you've drawn. Now flip it over on the other side. Now you're going to draw a line from the unclipped corners. So again, you're going to go down here to where the stitching goes to the edge on the folded side, and the other end of the ruler is going to go up to the pivot point on the corner on the raw sides. And again, I'm drawing this with a magic marker or Sharpie, whatever, so you'll be able to see it. Normally I would use a Frixion pin, something that I can iron off that goes away. Okay, the trick here is you're going to pull the top and bottom apart because you only want to cut one side at a time. Okay, so you've got them pulled apart. You're going to find your line. You're going to make a little snip, just enough to get your scissors in there. And again, only cut the top portion of your enclosed piece. cut along the line, and you see I'm not on the line. All the way down to this point. And then just cut down to this point. Okay? So it's opened here. There's my red and white stripe fabric. Okay? So now you're going to flip it over. And again, you're going to separate the top from the bottom because you're only cutting through one layer. Cut through both, you're going to have a mess. You got to start all over. Clip just enough to get your scissors in there. Cut along that line all the way to the other end. Up to that corner, not through the corner, but just up to the corner. Go back, finish off. The other side, don't cut through the stitching. You're going to have a tube. So what you want to do is there's going to be 3 seams that you'll press open. This is the boring part, but it's easier to do this and show you exactly what I'm talking about rather than stopping the video and then me trying to have to figure out how to splice it back together. I'm sure there's an easy way to do it, but being a one-man band, easier for me to do it this way. And again, I like using a 1/2 inch seam allowance just because it's easier for me. I am not a quilter. That 1/4 inch seam allowance is a nightmare. Quilters say, oh, it's really easy. But that's what people who can grow things as well say, oh, you can grow anything. No, I cannot grow anything. So I do what's easier for me. 1/2 inch seam allowance is what I'm comfortable with. Okay, so I have pressed open all my seams, 3 seams, and here's a tube. Now the trick here, I'm going to trim off these where the seam allowance came in just to make it even. So here's your tube. This is right side out. Okay? Now, what you want to do this time, bring my cutting mat over here. I hope it fits in between the tripod. You're going to cut whatever width bias that you want. Only 2/3 of the way up. So, you know, you can fold this in thirds and get it exact, but let's just say that this is 31 inches from end to end. So let's go up about 20 inches. Okay? You're going to line up your raw edges as best you can. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to go over 2.5 inches. This is a 24-inch ruler, so I'm going to pull this down to where 4 inches is hanging off the edge here. Again, you don't have to be perfect at this. Just be consistent. Okay? Just be consistent. Take your rotary cutter, or if you don't have one, draw lines and then cut with scissors, but you have to make sure you keep them straight or together. And you're going to cut through both layers this time. Again, 2.5 inches wide, 20 inches this way. That's 2/3 of the way up. Okay? So I've cut that, I move that out of the way, so that gives me another straight edge to work with. And again, I'm going to go up, leaving the 4-inch mark hanging off the end down here, 2.5 inches across with my clear ruler. Go up to the end of the ruler, move that out of the way, 2.5 inches again. Move that out of the way. Two and a half inches again. Move that out of the way. This isn't quite 2.5. It's a little over 2, maybe 2.25, but close enough. Again, like I said, I always cut my strips wider so it gives me room to play. If you want to divide this equally, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strips is how many I've got, it's up to you. Again, no rules as far as the width. I don't like cutting it too close. This is when it starts to look like a car wash. What you want to do, and you'll understand in a minute, is you want to take a ruler. This is the way I like to do it. You've got all this hanging down. Here's your uncut portion up here. Slide that ruler under there. Because what you want to do is you want to be able to pull these cut edges just over away from you. Car wash. See how those little things kind of flap like that, like a car wash used to do, or still does. And you're going to lay it down. I guess I could push all these little things under here again. All right, so you've got your little cut edges down here. Let's see if I can straighten this up a bit. Sometimes you have to fiddle with this stuff so it lays where you can play with it. All right, slide the ruler out. Again, here are your cut edges, like down here. Put the black end of it here so maybe you can see. These are the cut edges. All right, you don't want to cut from one slice up to straight up to the other slice, because then all you're going to have is just straight loops. That won't help you at all. You're going to go, and this time I'm going to, I don't normally draw the lines like this, but I found that it was easier. I was trying to eyeball it, and sometimes I make a mess, and I think it confuses people. I think having the lines drawn is much easier. So, go from your first cut at the top, that one cut, and you're going to go down to the second cut over to your right at the bottom, because that's going to give you the angle. Okay. I hope this is clear, but I'm just going to take a marker, and you can see that this is wider, goes down to narrower. Okay, so what you're going to do is this last piece over here is going to kind of go off the edge. So put your ruler, and like I said, I'm using 2.5 inches. Put the 2.5 inch mark on the line you just drew. And on the left side of your ruler, draw another line. It's going to go right off the edge. And I hope you can see that okay. So from that point, you're going to go from cut edge to cut edge, because you've you determined over here that you taper it off. So you are going to be cutting on the bias, and you're only drawing your lines on this top part. You don't need to worry about anything underneath, because that is the sliced part that we made. And here you are at the end. Your raw edge over here. Here's the last mark that I made. I don't know if I can, it doesn't look like I can zoom in. So we're going to put the ruler on the 2.5 inch mark on this last line that you just drew. And it's going to taper off on this side. So go from the cut edge up here over to the edge here. And then all you're doing is cutting on these lines that you just drew. And you see how you went from the cut edge here and it tapered off here, and the same thing going the opposite direction over here. It tapers off at the top and goes down to the first cut edge. Gosh, I hope this makes sense, because this is so easy. You don't have to create that wonky tube, although that's still a really good method of making continuous bias. Now here, I'm gonna cut off this tapered part. Off it goes. And you're not having to try to cut as you move the tube around. You're just going to cut on this third of the portion that you left uncut, the lines that you drew. Holy cow, this is easy. I thank my friend Melanie Lee who showed me this. It's like one of those magic moments, you know. Once you figured it out. I'm a very visual person, so I had to have the drawings of how this was done, because in my head I couldn't wrap my head around how it was done. There you go. Again, here is the tapered portion, and I'm going to go up a little ways, and I'll probably get rid of this bulky part right here. I'm just going to cut above that. Off it goes. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Approximately 8 yards of bias. Again, I'm going to make cording so I can do some Christmas pillows with this red and white stripe. I like to do a lot of rustic type pillows, so you know, some neutrals and red and white stripe, and that's going to be really fun. If you have any questions, just leave me a message on YouTube, and I will try to remember to look at those. I'm really bad about not looking, but I will try to pay closer attention. So if you guys have any questions, again, this is Patsy Spencer, Deer Creek Studios. Glad you watched. I'm going to post another video pretty soon about my favorite sewing tools, favorite sewing notions. I had to really pare it down because I have so many, but I think you'll like it. Okay, thank you.